Okay, so here we are, first car journalism project of the year. It is my own car, which is a Ford Figo 1.4 ambiente, obviously 1.4 relating to the size of the engine. Ambiente is the trim, so that's actually the base trim from the, I think it's from 2010 to 2015. It's a pretty interesting car. Everybody seems to kind of have one or know someone who has one. It's been a great little runabout for me. I'm extremely fortunate to have it in my name. I did not purchase it myself, however, as a first car and as a question, which I'll get to in a moment, it has, rather answering that question, it's been great. I really haven't had many problems with it at all, but I'll be talking to you about those maybe even in future videos, but definitely in this video, so stay tuned if you want to know about that. But the question we're going to be answering today is it actually worth buying a 2014 Ford Figo Ambiente in 2022? Now listen, that is a pretty interesting question to be asking because, as I said, everybody kind of knows someone who either has one of these or maybe wants to see about getting them because they're actually pretty inexpensive. Now listen, Ford gets a really bad rap for their quality, especially in this time, and because this car is built in India, there's a lot of preconceived notions about exactly how good the build quality is. I think personally, for the price, this one was bought for just under 100,000 Rand with about 45,000 Ks on the clock, and in relation to that, there really hasn't been any problems. I mean, I'm not exactly, listen, I love cars. I'm not exactly someone who takes immaculate care of their car, just because, you know, we all have busy lives, and as it turns out, that's just the way things are sometimes. However, you know, just checking your oil and water regularly, checking your tire pressures, you know, not going curb surfing with your steel wheels, which this does unfortunately come on. That's something I would have to give to the Ford Volkswagen Polo Vivo, which is even of the same generation. In fact, that's the car my brother owns. Standard, I believe, on that car, although it might have been an option, I'm not entirely sure on that, he gets proper alloy wheels, which is much nicer, and someone might not steal your hubcaps, especially here in South Africa. You know, we have terrible petty theft amongst a lot of things, and you know, your hubcaps may get stolen. So but yeah, I mean, I guess they decreased the price, you know, on that, in that front. So obviously, I think it does definitely bring the price down, and they can put their money into other things. Something they did really well, which I really didn't expect in this car, the sound system. The sound system in this car is, for a standard car under 100,000 Rand for the Ks, I couldn't have asked for something better. I think the mids are very good. It's very easily tunable through the head unit, and otherwise just a really good audio profile. I'd say if I'm comparing that to the equivalent Polo Vivo, my brother's, for instance, which is a car I've experienced quite a lot, I'd say the audio system in that car is actually simply not good enough. I suppose I've been spoiled in this car, and I know that sounds ridiculous. You know, you can get car audio systems that are a lot higher end than this, but I think they've obviously used the acoustics to their advantage. So if there's something, if that is a deal breaker for you in terms of choosing between the two cars, definitely flipping go for this, and I'll tell you why. And also, it just feels more peppy, right, than the Polo. So getting onto the engine, this is obviously a 1.4 liter like the Polo as well, but it is I don't know, I think the rev range and the throttle mapping is a little bit different. So what that means is the way the throttle opens at particular RPMs is going to be different between the cars, and it dictates ultimately how the car drives. Now, one thing the Polo definitely has over this car is Rev Hang. The Rev Hang in that car is a lot less severe. This is a pretty severely Rev Hang tuned car, and that's probably just for emissions. You know, I believe the Ford Duratec engines they've been putting in these cars are pretty old now. You know, keeping up with emissions these days is just a prospect dealer auto manufacturers have to deal with. You know, there's just not much you can do about it. But besides that, you know, I don't know, I personally just prefer the response of this engine. I think that when it gets on power, I mean, even if we just do a little pull here, it gets about 3,000 RPM, 4,000 RPM, you know, it pulls hard enough. I mean, the car only weighs about a ton, right? That's not a lot, as it turns out. I know there must be terrible glare coming through the camera right now. There's not really much I can do about that. I'm afraid I'm using my phone on a very basic, what would you call it? Not even a gimbal, just a little stand for it there. Obviously this project, as I've stated in my description, is purely just based for the entertainment value you might get from it. Hopefully I'll answer some of your questions about the cars that I look into. And yeah, just stick around if that's something you're interested in. But moving on now, how does it ride? Well, it actually rides pretty well. It's not a very sophisticated ride as you might expect from a car like this. I mean, ultimately, it's, as I said, it's under 100,000 Rand. You know, if you're getting one in decent condition, stuff like that, as I said, that was a good deal. In particular, sorry, I was getting taken up our bus. Yeah, it's great. It's fine. You know, the wheels aren't too big. It's pretty soft in general, but you can tell where the car is when it's placed on the road. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say there. Now, moving on to the other dynamics of the car, we can start with the steering. Steering's pretty good. I would say that you can definitely tell that it weights up naturally. It is a hydraulic unit instead of the newer electronic ones, I believe. So you're just gonna naturally get more feeling out of them. You know, they perfected the hydraulic steering rack, as it turns out. And you know, perfecting something generally means that, you know, they've done it as well as they can possibly do it. And I think electronic units are getting closer to where hydraulic units ended up. But for the purposes of this video, I'd say it's got a nice weight to it. It's not too difficult, you know, steering and doing 3-point turns, stuff like that. It's easy enough, you know, you get by just fine. There's nothing that I would go, oh, okay, that is just an unacceptable level of, you know, vagueness or, you know, anyway, let me not belabor it too long. Steering's good. Steering's good. Something else I wanted to mention, the brakes are pretty grabby. Unfortunately, you get used to it like any car, but when you get in it for the first time, you know, you put your brake, you know, and then it just hooks up. So if that's something you like, it's not very progressive, but it does work. The brakes are good. As I said, the car just weighs over a ton, so, you know, you're not really gonna get any, like, you know, you don't need proper brakes for this. If you're thinking of doing a full discs all around, because the two back ones are drums, I wouldn't really recommend it unless you want to track your Ford Figo, which is not what this car is about. It's really just about a commuter car, you know, what's going to get you from A to B every day, and it does that really well. I really can't say or speak to any kind of thing where it can't do that. It's fairly practical. I think the boot's about 360 liters, you know. 360 liters is plenty, definitely more than my brother's Polo Vivo, the same generation, which is, I think, pretty good. You know, I mean, this car's architecture is actually based off of the Fiesta, which was actually quite a well-designed car. So practicality wise as well, you're talking of a pretty decent legroom. Although I'm not going to show you in this video today, you'll have to take my word for it. I've got pretty tall friends, and they can all fit comfortably in here, taking trips to Pet, stuff like that. And you know, you can fit, I'd say, 2 pretty big sized duffel bags in the back at least, with the cover on. Without the cover, you know, the seats fold down, so you can also obviously just pack stuff through. It is not an even floor, so loading can be a bit of a schlep sometimes, but besides that, hey, I mean, yeah, everything else works fine. One thing I will say that it doesn't come standard with, which I really think they should have put in, is electric front windows. Something like the Renault Sandero or Dacia Sandero if you're in Europe. Some are watching me talk about cars, which would be very funny, but it's, you know, standard electric windows in this day and age. I feel like it's a must. I know that they're putting their money into other things, but you know, if Renault can do it, Dacia, I really think that Ford could have implemented it in the ambiente. I believe if you get the trim up, you do get electric windows. I'm not sure if it's all round. I think it might just be in the front, but I don't know, someone can fact check me on that. So what else to talk about? I mean, it's got all the standard stuff that you would need on a day like today when it gets hot. AC is a must, and the AC works nice. It blows cold. I can't really complain about that. I think that you'd be hard pressed to go, okay, there's certain features that definitely should be here. You know, Bluetooth audio, standard, works well enough. It takes a bit long to connect sometimes, but you know, whatever, semantics really. The visibility all round, very good. I would say, thankfully this car was designed in an era where pillars didn't have to be so big that they totally encompassed your view. Your blind spots are minimal, and the view out the front is good. You can generally tell where the car's pointed. I will say I wish the hood arches were a little bit more pronounced. Bonnet arches were a little bit more pronounced, because as it turns out, it's got a very short nose, and that can be a little bit intimidating, especially for a new driver, which I was a couple of years ago, trying to steer around parking lot, stuff like that. You know, I think that that's maybe something that was a bit of an oversight. But another plus to the short nose, of course, is that you can pretty much park it anywhere. It's a pretty small car, but as I said, the inside is pretty big, so yeah, you can really do it. So now coming on to the just jumping straight on over, as I said, you know, I haven't done this before, but anyway, the manual transmission, and this ties in with what I was talking about earlier with Rev Hang. So you shifting the car from day to day, and as a manual, it's fine. It's a pretty basic manual transmission. It's a 5-speed with a dog leg reverse, which is to say you pull it towards you after 5th gear if you want to put it into reverse. Now, it works fine. It's a little bit imprecise. I think that the Polo's transmission and Volkswagens in general have a much easier system. It's a bit smoother, and unfortunately, that's just the fact of the matter. You know, Volkswagen just have the expertise for this kind of thing. So yeah, anyway, that's pretty much the reality of the situation when you're talking about Fords versus Volkswagen, stuff like that. But now moving on to the Rev Hang aspect, shifting too quickly, disengaging the clutch, stuff like that. If you want to drive fast and shift hard, you can expect some drivetrain shock. So I'll try to demonstrate to you what that looks and feels like. See, that was me trying to shift the car and the revs were hanging, and you could see that I visibly shook in my seat, which is honestly, you know, something they really should have tuned out. They managed to do it really well in the Polo. In the Figo, it's just not quite there. The level of refinement you're getting with Volkswagen is generally higher. I prefer this car, and this is the answer to the question that I'm ultimately asking in this video. You know, is it worth it to get it in 2022? And I say, if you can get it for the price I got it, I know inflation and COVID and everything, if you can get it for the price I managed to get it in 2019, or just a little bit more than that, I think it's definitely worth it. They're great cars. However, they are just, you know, they're flawed like any car. But are those flaws, you know, going to stop you from choosing this or the Polo? I mean, everybody's got a freaking Polo. A lot of people got Ford Figos. Hopefully that sheds some light on the situation. And yeah, if you like this kind of thing, maybe consider subscribing. I'm just doing this as a project. I really don't going to take it personally. But anyway, we'll see where this takes me. And yeah, check you. See you for the next one. Cheers.